Okay, welcome to lesson 7 here. There's just a few little things I wanted to go over briefly about this lesson. Um, in this chapter, we finally meet the copulative verb eimi, which in Greek simply means is a verb of being. Okay, when I say copulative, a copulative literally means to join together. Okay, so it joins together things in much the same way that the word am is or are joins together two things. Like you say, I am a man. The word am joins I to the word man. Okay, it's copulative. Okay, it joins things together. Now, note in Greek, these words are enclitic, which is to say they lack an accent on their own, generally speaking, and they tend to throw back their accent onto the previous word. Okay, the rules are given in the chapter for this, how this works. Don't worry too much about it, okay? I'm not really going to be asking you on a test or anything to write Greek. Okay, and I think this is the kind of thing where, you know, it's enough that you have the general idea of what happens and why, than it is for you to spend a lot of time with the rules. Okay, much more important to spend on vocabulary, paradigms, principal parts, that kind of thing. Okay, now the verb eimi also can mean there is or there are in the third person. Okay, so for instance here I notice I wrote artos estin, literally there is bread. Okay, you do see that sometimes in the Bible as well. Okay, I don't know if he mentioned that in the chapter. I don't think that he did, which is why I threw it in there. Okay, antecedents here I think are fairly straightforward. Let's take a look at a few more of these principal parts just briefly. Sozo is a fairly common word that means to save or to rescue. Okay, principal parts: sozo, soso, esosa. Okay, exactly what you'd expect so far. Sesoka, sesosmai, esosthein. Okay, in this case, I'm not sure exactly why you don't see the sigma sometimes in the last principal part, but you just don't. Okay, don't worry about it. But sometimes you don't. Okay, now that's actually a little bit unusual because oftentimes words that begin with a sigma, a more common one would be the word for turn or to turn back. Strepho, you often see it with a compound like hupostrepho, which means to return or go back. Okay. It goes like this: strepho, strepso, strepsa. Okay, so exactly what you'd expect based on what we've seen from like grapho or blepo. Okay, or grapho would be a good example. Okay, now instead of the reduplication here, we see again an estropha. Okay, it's not sestropha, it's estropha. Okay, but other than that, it's pretty much predictable, right? You by now will expect the phi in the fourth principal part with a verb that has a psi like this. So strepho, strepso, estrepsa, estropha, estramai. You get the double mu as you do in many cases there, and estrophane. Okay, notice it's not estrepthane. Okay, it's estrophane. You don't always get a theta in the sixth principal part. Okay, we've seen one verb before that didn't have that, namely ekrubane from krupto, which means to hide. Okay, so again, most verbs will have a theta stem in the last principal part, but not all of them. Okay, once in a while you get ones that don't. Okay, and sometimes they're the more commonly used ones, so just be on the lookout for that as well. Most of the time it does, though. Okay, all right, let's look at a couple more patterns here. This is the verb praso, which is the less common but still oftenly used verb for do or to make or to practice. Okay, notice the double sigma there. Okay, let's take a look at how it goes. Okay, in this case, something strange happens, or at least looks strange when we first see it. Okay, praso. Okay, but proxo, eproxa. Okay, so again, instead of loosening this, instead of loosening this up with a sigma, we get a kasai here. Okay, it kind of roughens up. I'm not exactly sure why that is. My old teacher could have explained it to you, but if you asked him and you get one of his answers, you wouldn't want to ask him again because it would be long and involved. Okay, we're not so much interested in the phonetics so much of the phonology. We're interested mainly in translation. But again, just getting a handle of what these verbs do in practice is good. And practice is good because this is actually the word which practice comes from. Okay, praso, proxo, eproxa. Okay, pepraka. Notice instead of the kappa here, you get a kind of an aspirated kappa, which is a chi there. A chi is more like a ha, like that. It's related to the kappa, but it's a little more aspirated. Okay, that's just a pattern whenever you see this double sigma stem. Okay, now incidentally, if you ever want to take classical Greek, you're going to see that this double sigma, the way Plato and Aristotle would have said it, is a double tau. It would have been prato. Okay, prato, praxo. Okay, and that's actually if you really want to know how we get the Kasai, okay, it's the combination of the sigma and the tau. Okay, but in time, that double T went away and became a double S. Okay, there's one word we've seen so far that actually does that, thalasso. Thalassa, which is the word for sea. That was thalato or thalate, which is how Plato would have said it. Okay, but be that as it may, by the time of the Bible, that form had pretty much disappeared for the most part. Okay, so here we get praso, praxo, eproxa, pepraka, pepragmai. Okay, that's where you get the word pragmatism from, and eprokthane. Okay, so again, not terribly difficult here. You just have to get the handle for this particular construction. Okay, once you see a few of these, the pattern is good. Okay, now another very common word that's particularly common in the Old Testament, which uses it probably a good 1,000 times or so, the word for keep. Okay, keep the commandments, keep the law. Adam and Eve were told to keep watch over the garden. Okay, this is the word for watch or to guard or to keep. Okay, phulasso, this is where we get the word prophylactic. Okay, which is something that guards you from infection or disease. Okay. So let's go through it. Phulasso, phulaxo, ephulaxa, pefulaka, pefulagmai. Notice the gamma mu here as well, just like we saw here. And ephulacthane. Okay, phulasso, phulaxo, ephulaxa, pefulaka, pefulagmai, ephulaxane. Notice here, it's not fefulaka or fefulagmai. Why? Well, remember when we saw we don't reduplicate with a theta. Likewise, we don't reduplicate with a phi. Okay, it just hardens up to a pi. F is just too awkward a sound to make. Okay, you harden up one of them and make it a p. Okay, but we've seen that before with therizo. Remember, therizo, theriso, etherisa, tetherica, tetherismai, etheristane. The word for harvest. Okay, so again, these are all pretty much what you'd expect. Don't spend time with the rules. Once you recite these enough times, you will basically internalize the rules without having to memorize a single one of them. You'll know almost instinctively what will happen. Okay, to such the point that when you experience a word you don't know, okay, you can almost, with a pretty good likelihood, predict what its principal parts will be. And that's what I want to get you to the point at, to be able to do. Okay, now, didasco. Didasco, this is an older verb, an old friend from chapter 2, lesson 2. It means to teach. Didasco, didaxo. Okay, again, the SKS sort of softens to a kasai. Okay, you see how the kasai comes about. It's sort of a combination of several different letters. Okay, didasco, didaxo, edidaxa, dedidaka. Okay, we've seen that before. When we have a kasai here, it becomes a chi in the fourth principal part rather than a kappa. We saw that before with praso and phulasso. Okay, dedidogmai, again, the gamma mu there, edidocthane. Okay, again, this is all pretty, straightforward. There's just a few little variations with each one of these. Okay, but again, don't spend time, memorizing, all the rules about when you get a gamma here, when you get a chi there, and, what happens with this. Just get in the habit of saying them. Okay? Then they'll become as natural to you as they would to, an ancient Athenian. Okay? Or, someone like St. Paul's case, an ancient a person from Corinth or something. All right? So, just get in the habit of saying these, and then they'll become really natural for you. Okay, let's do a few more of these. Okay, akuo is a verb to hear. This is a very, very common verb. We learned it in lesson 1. I think it was the first verb we actually did learn. The first few of them are entirely predictable based on what we've seen. Akuo, akuso, ekusa. Notice We don't get an epsilon here. Instead, we get an elongation. Why? Because we begin with a vowel. Okay, remember, verbs that begin with a vowel, you don't get the temporal augment in the third principal part. You instead get an elongated vowel it begins with. Okay, now the only one you don't really expect is akekua. Akekua, that's just one you have to memorize. Okay, we don't see a fifth principal part of this verb, but we do see a fifth one, and it's ekuzthane, which is pretty much, again, exactly what you'd expect. Okay, you have an elongation here and a theta, eta, nu ending here. Okay, now why is there no fifth one? Well, simply because that verb doesn't exist in any ancient Greek literature that we have yet discovered. Okay, when we've looked at all the ancient literature that we have, all the papyri that we've unearthed, everything we found, we've never found the particular fifth principal part of this verb. Okay, it may not have existed ever, or there may just not be one that we've found. Okay, but it's not attested, and so therefore we leave it blank. Okay, this actually happens quite a bit. Okay, in Greek, where we'll only have certain forms that are attested. Okay, and the ones that aren't attested, you'll just see a line through them like that. All right, and of course, New Testament Greek also has that problem, in a greater way, because the New Testament is limited in what it produces. Okay, so Trenchard, for instance, only lists the forms that are attested in New Testament Greek. All right, not necessarily the forms that are found, that are real forms, but are found, say, only in Plato or only in Aristophanes or whatever. Okay, so nonetheless, we'll stop there. We'll do some other common ones coming up. Lego, lambano, estio. These verbs are very common, but unfortunately, Greek, like most other languages, the most common words are irregular in some of their forms, and so we'll have to learn those separately, which we will do in time. Okay, but for now, let's just chew on these, and I will see you later.